Ladies and gentlemen, this is Leon Weinstein speaking from Los Angeles, California. It seems that China falsified American ballots that were used in the 2020 elections, and the Democrats, again, apparently manipulated 15 million votes. Coronavirus disease was organized by the CIA, the Democratic Party, and China to destroy the United States voting system and remove Trump. He was preventing all of them from robbing the people of the United States. This is the kind of information released by today's FBI leadership. Well, let's say, so to speak, with a question mark at the end for now. And all of this has been handed over to the Senate committee. But first, still about Israel, about the war, about loved ones, and about America's role in the conflict in the Middle East. I read Trump's tweet addressed to Ali Khamenei, and I thought about how Trump really knows how to get under his opponent's skin. Here's his tweet.
It was just posted literally a few minutes ago in a very rare post by President Trump. President Trump has 106 million followers. Ladies and gentlemen, we know exactly where the so-called Supreme Leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but he is safe there. We are not going to eliminate him or kill him, at least not for now.
Well, to put it simply, it means we can take you out at any moment. But we won't. Not yet. We won't. Not yet. We don't like that you Iranians are shooting at civilians. We'll get really angry if you don't stop.
We don't want civilians or American soldiers to be shot at with rockets. Our patience is running out. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is President Trump, classic tough talk.
Actually, I think the Iranian mullahs despise us. We're infidels, which means to them we're dogs. Worse than dogs. And when we have casual conversations with them, they think it's because we're afraid. Whether it's in front of them or in front of Muhammad, I don't know who, but we're scared because of Allah. They think that we're trying to hide how nervous we are when we talk to them, and when we tell them, let's say, don't test our patience because we'll crush you like a lousy fly. They understand that we're serious, and are you all?
An Ayatollah, about Ayatollah, the leader of Iran, and so... What's happening right now? There's quite an intense rocket attack going on in this region at the moment. Israel is bombing Iran. Iran is bombing Israel. It's terrible. We don't like it. We don't want war. We've always been against war, and we absolutely don't want America to get dragged into another long, stupid, endless war again. Ladies and gentlemen, but obviously tensions are rising and escalating, and unfortunately there are more and more civilian casualties. Some of the footage is just mind-blowing. See for yourself. This is what it looks like when a ballistic missile hits your neighborhood directly.
Bang, hell breaks loose. Let me remind you that the intelligence agencies of the world knew very well that Iran had more than 1,000 of its own ballistic missiles, and China built additional missile production facilities for them. In a short period of time, this number increased to either 1,500 or 2,000. And during 2026, China promised to supply even more. They mentioned around 6,000 over 2 years, or 3,000 per year, numbers in that range. And Pakistan and North Korea helped with uranium enrichment, by the way, transferring to Iran the technology for producing centrifuges and other equipment, which originally came from Rosatom. Well, I mean from Russia, from Moscow. By striking Iran, we would now have sort of a secure rear, meaning Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis would be incapacitated. Plus, we didn't get 8,000 ballistic missiles, but actually less than 2,000. Yes, all of which are aimed at Israel, mainly at Tel Aviv and Haifa. Haifa is the city where my great-grandfather lived with his family. He was the principal of the first Jewish school in northern Israel. That means they blew up the oil refinery. Well, it was damaged, not blown up. The office of the defense company Rafael was damaged, as well as several civilian buildings, including my great-grandfather's house. So at the school where we lived, my parents did too. They have passed away. May they rest in peace. My brother called me from Israel and told me that our family home, which is now a synagogue and not a school anymore, has been destroyed. There were no casualties in this house. One girl died in another house also destroyed by a rocket. In another year, the mullahs could attach a dirty bomb to one of these rockets. And then life in the center of Haifa would have stopped, just like in the center of Tel Aviv. Not just 2,000 rockets, enough for 2 weeks of barrages, but 8,000, and some of them with radioactive payloads. Well, that just couldn't be allowed, period. That's why, as soon as the plan was developed, Mossad and the Israeli Air Force started working on it, approximately since October of 1924. And as soon as it was developed and, as they said, a target bank was compiled, meaning a list of targets, Israel went on the attack, waiting 60 days at Trump's request. All of us are actually so focused on the Middle East and this conflict that at the same time, a lot is happening on the home front as well. For example, the FBI, under the leadership of Kasha Patel, is discovering more and more hidden documents.
This morning, we're going to go hard and show you something amazing. Active criminal voter fraud is happening in every state right now. The darker the state, the worse the situation with election fraud. It's amazing what's happening in Minnesota. In Minnesota, there are hundreds of cases of election fraud that can be considered mass vote rigging. Just a reminder, raise your hand if you are a United States citizen. You are a United States citizen. When a criminal foreigner votes, he steals your most sacred constitutional right from you. Because when a criminal foreigner votes, he votes against you. He cancels out your vote. You understand, it's like someone came to your home, tore up your ballot right in front of you, spit on it, threw it in your face, then stomped on it and set it on fire. That's what these people are doing. That's exactly what they're allowing to happen. Right now, in every state in America, there are cases of election fraud that are currently being prosecuted.
So, in every state, but especially in Texas, Minnesota, Illinois, and North Carolina. And there are court proceedings for hundreds of lawsuits about fraud and manipulation in the elections. They're still talking about the year 2020 and also about 2015. The Democrats tirelessly shouted that Russia stole the election so Trump could win. Hillary went on all the shows whenever she was sober and natural and said she didn't believe the victory was fair. The same thing was said by her, well, let's say her campaign staff and the mischievous harasser, Billy, Bill's husband. All right, well, let's move on to a more recent story.
Kamala Harris, in 2018, joining hands with the Republicans, said that election fraud is not only a terrible problem in this country. We need to go back to paper ballots. We need to count ballots openly in front of everyone again. A physical receipt, stamping the ballots, adding watermarks so everyone can see who voted. Here's a stack of citizens. Here's the identification. Here are the votes. We all obviously agree with that. Kamala Harris, really listen to this.
Systems for auditing, but also what they can do in terms of best practices and better equipment. We are discussing with them the fact that it's probably better not to connect your voting system to the internet because that would create additional vulnerabilities. And now look at where we are now. This year, in the year of our Lord 2017, we're talking about paper ballots. But in fact, it might actually be one of the smartest systems. Going back, to those times when we had something tangible, something we could hold in our hands. Because Russia can't hack a piece of paper the way they can hack a computer system connected to the internet.
Benny Johnson found this speech from a person who suddenly started demanding that people vote using the internet, which, she's right, encourages and facilitates voter fraud. Why all of a sudden, if you know for sure that this allows cheating, Is there any other reason to push for it besides the fact that your side is preparing for massive cheating? It's a scheme. And now I have to play a long video of Benny because he's building a line of reasoning that I wouldn't want to interrupt. Absolutely wonderful. Nothing to add, nothing to take away.
But I agree with Kamala Harris, and this Kamala Harris speaks directly. I don't like electronic voting. I believe that malicious foreign states can hack our electoral systems, and they are very hard to protect. We need to go back to paper ballots. We should put watermarks on those damn ballots. Each ballot should be linked to an official identification, and only citizens should be allowed to vote. I'm like, wait, who even is this? And then Kamala got what we call a briefing on this program. Kamala was taken into a small room at the CIA and told about a special plan. And this plan was pretty simple. Here's how it went. We're going to release a virus that we created. The CIA actually created this virus. Look at all the funding. Look at how many times Fauci went out at night. You know, Fauci would go to the CIA in a black van. He would come to the CIA in a black van with his security team. This is documented. We have those documents. This guy went there regularly. No official business, no explanations. That's because after September 11, the CIA funded a biological weapons program. The Patriot Act allocated a huge amount of money to create its own biological weapons program. Dr. Fauci was in charge of this, and he constantly had lab leaks. All of this was carried out through the CIA. When the lab leaks started spreading into the American population, Barack Obama made a crazy move that I completely agree with. I also agree with Obama and Kamala on the same show. I'm going to cancel myself right now. But Obama banned Dr. Fauci from conducting gain-of-function research. Even Obama thought it would end badly. And maybe that was the way. Like, probably Obama got a report where they said they're going to release a virus and destroy your presidency. That's a way, again, to keep the sword of Damocles hanging over him. So you go ahead and ban gain-of-function research. Fauci moves it overseas and does it in Wuhan. China uses a bunch of front companies, funds the creation. Scientists create a Frankenstein virus and report it to Kamala Harris, informing her of their creation. It will cause such panic that we'll be able to break the electoral systems in America. We'll do something called mail-in voting, which no one will ever be able to secure. We'll get these ballots by mail, and we'll get millions of them that will be illegal. And we'll run them through the vote counting machine so fast that we can actually create as many ballots as we need to win. On election night, you'll notice surges and spikes in the data. You know, ballots, can you bring me one of those, make one of those? You know, the famous charts from 2020. Wherever we need ballots, we'll just print 1 million of them, right? We'll push them right through. Kamala, shut your mouth. Stop talking like we need to protect our elections. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to scare people to death. We'll make sure that every person in America agrees to vote only by mail, which is a crazy, just improper way of voting, and the dumbest of all possible ways. Ballots will be mailed to every address without limits, potentially sending multiple ballots to the same location, even to plots of land in Detroit that don't even exist. Let me just remind you that in Detroit, there are huge plots of land from which supposedly hundreds of mail-in ballots were sent. And when you go there, it's just an empty field. And that's the address. That's, so to speak, the listed address for the ballot. And the point is that... The point, ladies and gentlemen, is that this led to election results that look something like this. Wow, how mysterious. Just look at this at 2 in the morning. Boom. Just print as many ballots as needed to make it work. Now Kash Patel is finally releasing evidence from inside the FBI that explains charts like these. This is just crazy. But the rule we follow on this show, what we practice, is the following. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. Believe people when they reveal their true selves. And when someone explains what they're doing, just nod and say, okay, we hear you. One of the advantages, it's not a bug, it's a feature, is that Joe Biden has had Parkinson's disease and severe dementia for the past couple of years. The thing is, when your brain is basically dissolving into fog, you just don't have the energy to lie. Because lying takes a lot of effort and creativity. When your brain is disintegrating into atoms and drifting away, you lose the capacity for high creativity. And that's why you see videos like that, where Joe Biden directly says that he's creating the largest election fraud organization in American history, because Joe Biden was briefed. Yo, we're going to release a virus, then
we'll use the virus to
scare people to death, change all the voting systems, and then rig the election against Trump. And Joe Biden says, absolutely. Now let me tell this to all Americans. It's recorded on tape.
We created, and you guys did it for our administration, for President Obama's administration. Before that, we created, I think, the most extensive and comprehensive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Remember how liberals always said, stop being mean to Joe, leave Joe alone.
Do you remember that?
They loudly screamed that we were being mean to Joe Biden. You just have to take his words as they are. Just listen to what he says. All right, well, here are the words that Joe Biden said. We have created the largest election fraud operation in American history. And look at how this is being demonstrated. I mean, you can watch the movie 2000 Mules and you'll clearly see it too. But here's just one example. There are numerous examples, but we'll only showcase a handful to demonstrate how it functioned. Here's a frame-by-frame comparison. I want this to be a frame-by-frame comparison. Okay, turn on the frame-by-frame comparison, because this is very important. He goes to the ballot box in Ohio, and that's a state run by Republicans, so just imagine how much worse things are in liberal states. And they're live, on television. And this reporter, who's kind of a fool, approaches a woman who is basically a Democratic activist because she says she voted for Carter against Reagan. So you understand she's a real 100% paid Democratic activist. This woman is sitting in a minivan. She's holding so many ballots in her hands. She's wearing a mask. She has so many ballots. She's holding so many ballots that they're falling out of her hands. Now in Ohio, we checked. You're not allowed to handle someone else's ballot. It's illegal. You're not allowed to do it even during the height of coronavirus disease. In this Republican state, you weren't allowed to vote for someone else. You weren't allowed to handle someone else's ballot. This crime was openly committed and captured on camera in a Republican state, suggesting it may be even more prevalent in Democratic states.
The only ballot drop box in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. You can see this woman voting now. Did you vote for Reagan or Carter? Carter? I see. We don't want to get too personal, but you can see that there's even a traffic jam here. You can go around this way and see. Look at him.
Ding, 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 like grandma at the slot machine. Ding, 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 ding. He was charged along with his small group, including his wife and a bunch of his friends. They went from mailbox to mailbox, from door to door, in the middle of the day. They just pulled ballots out of people's mailboxes and filled them out. For him, they changed votes. If someone voted against him, they took out the ballot and just voted for him and put that ballot back into the envelope. They did this thousands of times. And guess what? In the end, he won. Isn't it amazing what an incredible system we have in this country? If it can work, for example, for some of the dumbest with low gambas, okay, in Paterson, New Jersey, then how much easier would it be to do this on a large scale for some sophisticated network across the country? If the dumbest people...
You got it, I hope. The candidate, his wife, and a few of his friends went around the neighborhood, pulling out, taking sealed ballots from the boxes. In America, for those who don't know, you can use your own mailbox. You take a letter from there and you can put a letter in there for the mailman to pick up. So people filled out these ballots and naturally put them in their mailboxes. The day before, these guys would go around and take the ballots out of the mailboxes. If it was marked for his opponent, they would swap the ballot for one they brought with them. Or did they just redraw the vote there? And then, a miracle happened. He won. Great, right? Fair elections. We always have fair elections. And here's another overly smart activist. Well, just look at how dumb she looks.
Wanda's been arrested. The Democratic activist who was caught on camera allegedly stuffing ballots in Bridgeport, Connecticut last year was charged with unlawful possession of another person's ballot and attempting to influence a witness. But this has nothing to do with her alleged ballot stuffing. In 2023, this actually goes back all the way to 2019, Vanda was arrested for ballot fraud in the city's 2019 Democratic primary for the same candidate she helped elect in 2023, Mayor Joe Ghanem. Vanda is accused of filling out someone else's absentee ballot. She told this person not to vote in person and then asked them not to tell investigators what she had said. Vanda is not the only Democrat arrested for fraud. Charges were also brought against 3 other Democrats from Bridgeport. One is a city council member.
If these people who are clearly not very smart figured it out, then what can we say about those who are actually smart?
When you consider all the evidence, it's hard to draw any other conclusion. The question isn't whether there is widespread election fraud. The question is, how many elections in a row have been rigged? Here's footage from a Ring doorbell camera. This is not a resident of this house. They're coming up. These thieves are Democrat activists who come up and pull ballots out of mailboxes. And now listen to this poor woman who tried to vote, and they tell her, "You already voted, ma'am." And she says, "Well, that's not my signature on the ballot. Someone voted fraudulently for me." And they reply, "Shut up, ma'am." Really, you don't hear anything about how black women are being disenfranchised. They are targeting the votes of black women. They are trying to prevent black women from voting. Here's a prime example of how this happens, and you've never heard of this woman. Watch.
The second statement came from this woman from Lawrence, who is still waiting for election officials to decide whether her in-person vote or her mail-in vote will be counted, in which she says her signature was forged.
Why won't my vote be counted if I'm voting right in front of you and telling you that ballot you have isn't mine?
Right now, state election officials are dealing with these allegations, and we've been told that the results will be announced before the candidates begin their new terms in January.
We're working on it. Democrats keep saying that voting with identification will discourage black women and elderly people. So why doesn't it discourage them at the bank? And when you buy a ticket, say for a plane, I don't remember, do you need one for a train? I think for a long train ride, you also need to buy one. And why, when you enter a courthouse, do you have to show it without discouraging anyone? In other words, everyone who voted, that is, everyone who supports voting by mail and voting without identification or without checking identification, just showed up, passed through, nobody checks anything. They're all fraudsters, or at least accomplices to fraud. At best, I don't even know which is better. By the way, if Kamala Harris understands this, it means that even the last idiot will understand it too.
Kash Patel, this morning. The FBI has discovered documents outlining alarming allegations related to the 2020 United States elections, including accusations of interference by the Communist Party of China. I declassified these materials and gave them to Chairman Grassley for review. The documents' contents are unknown. The documents state that China developed a scheme for mass-producing fake driver's licenses. Here is an image of what it might look like. Here is an image of a stash of fake driver's licenses. Yes. This is a good example of what it might look like. So, China is mass-producing fake driver's licenses in the blue states. All you need to do is just show up with a driver's license and you can vote. That's why China is creating millions and millions of fake driver's licenses. They herd people into the polling stations. They come on election day and say, everything's ready. Don't look too closely, don't check through the system, just give me the ballot. And they can produce millions of ballots for Joe Biden.
The Democratic Party made millions of identification S in China, and in states run by Democrats, you can just show that you have an identification, and it won't be checked through the system. That is, for an outside observer. A person comes in, shows their identification, it's like they were checked and given a ballot. But in reality, there are people sitting there who are on the payroll of the Democratic Party, and they don't check but just give out the ballot. Wonderful, right? 1 million IDs with which every paid voter can vote in 20 places or even more. He and she are driven around on buses along a pre-planned route. And now there are tens and hundreds of thousands who voted for Biden. Kash Patel suspects that this is how, as he said, about 20 million one-time voters appeared in the United States in just 2021 time voters.
In August 2020, this was not confirmed or fully investigated. Instead, the FBI simply threw them away or hid them in a secret room so that no one could find them. Chris Wray testified under oath that there were no known foreign interference plots before the 2020 election, even though he had evidence of a scheme to rig the election against Donald Trump. Wow. New documents were handed over to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, who expressed concern that the Bureau and intelligence agencies were not fully vetted, but instead were simply ignored. Thanks to Chairman Grassley's oversight and cooperation, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency in the People's Bureau, Patel told the publication. In this regard, we found documents that Chairman Grassley requested, which contain alarming allegations related to the 2020 elections. In particular, these are allegations that the Communist Party of China was producing fake driver's licenses and sending them to the United States in order to facilitate mail-in voting fraud. The allegations, although they were confirmed, were suddenly withdrawn and never made public. Wow. Officials familiar with these documents reported that the FBI had confidential sources who, in the summer of 2020, said that the Chinese government was producing and exporting fake United States driver's licenses as part of a plan to create voter IDs for Chinese citizens living in the United States, so they could vote using fake mail-in ballots. Wait, Klein, hold on a second. Klein, wait. That's me. Reminds me of something. Didn't we discuss the case in 2024 when a Chinese student who was here as a guest was literally able to vote for Kamala Harris? In Michigan, of course, in a key swing state, and we kept shouting at the top of our lungs, how is this possible? How is it possible that a Chinese guy who just came here to study can vote? And we checked it. And it turns out, in Michigan, there's same-day voter registration, and if you bring your driver's license, you can get a ballot and vote. That's it. Hot dog number. Yes, that's right. So maybe this Chinese student was able to get one of those spicy, like General Tso's chicken IDs and just go and vote. And what's surprising about this is, here you go, not a citizen. Here's the news from Pravi. A Chinese agent who is not a citizen has been charged with illegal voter registration and for voting in the general election in Michigan. You're reading the article. Michigan counted this ballot and said, sorry, it can't be returned. That's what Michigan said.
How do you like this story? This isn't just election interference anymore. This is complete betrayal of the homeland. Betrayal for the sake of ideology by top leaders of both Democratic and Republican parties. Well, I hope it's mostly the Democrats, but similar parts of the Republicans too. And now here's a wonderful chart showing how many Democrats voted in 2012, in 2016, in 2020, and in 2024. You'll find that for the Democratic Party, in 2012 it was Obama, in 2016 it was Hillary, and in 2024 it's Kamala. Absolutely the same number of United States citizens voted for them, give or take a few votes across all of America. But for Biden, well, take a look. They weren't there before, and they completely disappeared after Biden. Right here, out of thin air, out of nowhere, in 2020. Remember the law of conservation of energy. Something can't come from nothing. It's just not possible. There are two exceptions. The intervention of the Lord God, and the second is the intervention of the Democratic Party of the United States of America. With a wave of a magic wand, out of 65 million, well, 67 there, so that's 65 to 67 million, yes, fans of the Democrats. By election day, Biden had 81 million. Where did those, let's say, 15, 16, 17 million come from, and where did they go in 24?
Already at the elbow. Just look at this. Here are the overall voting results from the last elections in 2012. Just look at this. Wow, Barack Obama totally kicked Mitt Romney's ass. Got it. All right, it's all good. Fair and square, you won, man. Look at this. All right, 2016. Hillary Clinton got more votes than Trump, but Trump won the electoral votes. That's how it works. Cry, lady. Cry into your box of wine some more, you old bitter hag. All right? But you can still see that Hillary Clinton got about the same number of votes. It matches up and makes sense. And what about you? Are we just going to skip 2020 and go straight to Kamala Harris? Look, Kamala Harris in the last election just a couple of months ago got about the same number of votes. Right, it's right on the line. I see, it's right on the line. President Trump became much more popular and created a truly impressive coalition. Well, just look at that. What the hell happened in 2020? Wow, that's really weird. You know, if you looked at it from the perspective of, say, sports statistics or something like that, you'd think someone was doping. You'd say someone was doping. Let's imagine these were home runs in a season, you know, for the same player. Because it's the same Democratic Party. You'd say someone here is on steroids. It's like the Barry Bonds situation. It's like the Mark McGuire situation. Where the hell did those 20 million voters come from, and where did they go if the Democrats built such a powerful coalition? You can't explain to me how it happened that they actually didn't vote, and Trump is the same candidate. The Republicans have the same candidate. In 2016, 2020, and 2024, democracy was at stake. Democracy was at
Stake.
It's simple, Jack. You make me happy. This is an election for plain Jack. Never cross that line. That's what's happening here in 2020. They've completely crossed that line. And they expect us to believe that all these voters just damn it, disappeared like with a Thanos snap. They got Thanos'd. That's what happened. A damn Marvel situation with Thanos. Boom. They're gone. Poof. Cash Patel says that's what happened.
Amazing and astonishing. But maybe printing IDs in China is just a Republican fabrication?
The United States Customs and Border Protection intercepted 20,000 fake IDs at the same time. Intelligence. So that's what they managed to intercept when we had an open border. Ladies and gentlemen, they really did seize 20,000 fake IDs. Can you show that diagram again? So how many batches of 20,000 fake IDs did you need? I mean, just think about that. What if they were sending 20,000 at a time?
A day, then.
You could create millions of fake voters very quickly, really fast. And then the votes. Once votes are cast with mail-in ballots, the voters vanish, making verification impossible.
On our side, we'll probably start working with the states when we see violations, especially if some districts show a higher voting percentage in certain counties and in some states. I assume that Chuck Grassley will start working with each of these people, starting with those responsible at the state level, then the county, and down to the polling place to figure out where these violations are coming from and start trying to determine where the extra votes actually came from. We now have a reason to dig deeper since the Democrats were blocking us at every step. There's nothing to see here. Ignore them. They're just deniers, like election deniers and all that. Now that we have evidence that China was clearly interfering in our elections, this has opened a real federal investigation, and we have to find out first how this happened and second, how to prevent it. We can't go back and change the 2020 election. You know, that train has already left the station. But what we can do is make sure this doesn't happen again in the future so that everyone can be confident when they go to a polling station anywhere in the United States that the election is being conducted fairly. And that's precisely where this entire investigation will lead.
Yeah, I mean, look, when something is inflamed, it hurts when you press on it. And when Republicans across the country insisted on voter identification laws, which, by the way, are hugely popular, it's one of the most popular initiatives. We have polls. It's one of the most popular things in America right now. 85% of the country supports voter identification, including most Democrats. That's right. But when we pushed for it in 2021, it was considered the most racist thing possible to require voter identification. They were literally shouting about it from the rooftops. And we have to assume it's because they had some kind of fake identification scheme, and that's how they rigged the 2020 election. It just makes sense.
So now it's clear why all the left-wing media were screaming at the top of their lungs that demanding, requiring, showing, and especially, God forbid, checking an identification was unacceptable. That's racism identification-ism. Like, black people are supposedly so dumb that they won't be able to understand that you need to bring your identification to the polling station. For those who don't know, ksiva in street slang means a passport or an identification card. And like all good things, it came into Russian from Yiddish or Hebrew, where ksav means written or document. By the way, words like shmon, shmonat, the word for search or to frisk. But do you actually know what it really means? In prisons, Jews would shout shmona shmona, meaning 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock, to remind each other that searches were imminent. And accordingly, the non-Jewish guys who were also in those prisons decided that shmona meant a search and shmonat meant to search. By the way, the word for road, derek in Hebrew, also didn't come from the Slavic language. Sauerkraut, pickled cabbage. Contrary to popular belief, it was not invented by the Slavic peoples. They didn't even have such a word. I think they borrowed a foreign word, that's why kavush, pickled, kavush, kruv, kavush, pickled cabbage. Or, for example, kokma, which Russophones for some reason consider to be originally and purely Slavic. Kochma actually means cleverness in Hebrew. Well, cleverness, that's Hebrew for you. But by the way, even the word shlyuka, which is a favorite among, let's say, Russian housewives, doesn't mean what you think. It actually means messenger. So shlyuka is a messenger, someone sent by a rabbi to a Jew who has come on a business trip to cook, wash, and iron for him while he takes care of his business. By the way, I just remembered another word that's also popular among the Russian population, kalyava. Kalyava, yes. So kalav means milk. And on Saturdays in the villages, because you can't take money at that time. But so that the children and others would have milk, the milkman would deliver it for free, kalav for free. That's what it means. So, as it turned out, non-Jewish people found out that this kalav was free, and that's how they started saying kalyava. All right, let's return to discussing politics. I'm sure some of you are already asking yourselves, where's the cherry on top? So, where's the cherry on the cake? Is it coming now? Where is it going?
In conversations with Israeli sources, they draw a sharp distinction between what's happening here. The Israelis are striking military and nuclear facilities, while the Iranians are launching ballistic missiles at Israeli civilian targets. Brett.
Trey Engst in Tel Aviv, thank you. We are now joined by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be with you, Brett.
Let me start from the very beginning. Why did you start this operation right now?
Because we faced an imminent threat, a double existential threat. First, the threat that Iran is rushing to arm itself, using enriched uranium to create atomic bombs with the specific and declared goal of destroying us. Second, the rapid buildup of their ballistic missile arsenal to the point where they can produce 3,600 new missiles a year. And in 3 years, 10,000 ballistic missiles, each of which weighs a ton and flies at Mach 6 straight to our cities, as you saw today. And in 6 years, 20,000. No country could withstand that, especially a country the size of Israel. That's why we had to act. It was the 11th hour. We really took action to save ourselves, but I think it wasn't just to protect ourselves, but also to protect the world from this inciting regime. We cannot allow the most dangerous country in the world to possess the most dangerous weapon in the world. We are protecting ourselves, but by doing so, we are also protecting many others.
You know, I want to clarify with you about the intelligence, about the nuclear part. Less than 2 months ago, the new Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, spoke on Capitol Hill and stated that everything had been suspended since 2003 and had not been resumed. So the Iranians have not resumed their nuclear program. Does that mean something has changed from the end of March to this week? Were the United States data incorrect?
The intelligence we received and shared with the United States was absolutely clear. It was absolutely clear that they were working on a secret plan to turn uranium into weapons. They were moving very quickly. They could have obtained a test device and possibly an initial device within a few months, and certainly in less than a year. These were the intelligence reports that we shared with the United States. I believe we have excellent intelligence on Iran. We've already proven that, and it's something we cannot accept under any circumstances. Whether it's 6 months, 12 months, or 13, it doesn't matter. Once they take that path, it will be too late. We will not allow a second nuclear holocaust. One holocaust already occurred in the last century. The Jewish state will not allow the Holocaust to be imposed on the Jewish people again. This will not happen, never again. That is now, and we must act now.
What is the purpose of these strikes? In one of your speeches after the attacks began, you addressed a message directly to the Iranian people. Obviously, some of these strikes were aimed at the Iranian leadership, military, nuclear scientists, and other leaders. Is regime change part of this strategy?
That could very well be the result because the Iranian regime is very weak. I think basically it only has two things left. Its plans to build atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. Basically, that's all Iran has. They definitely don't have the support of the people. 80% of the population would gladly kick out these so-called theocratic thugs. For 46 years, they have been oppressing and killing people who have longed for freedom all this time. They shoot women just because their heads aren't covered. They shoot students. They are literally sucking the oxygen out of the life of these brave and talented people, the Iranian people.
By the way, can someone explain to me why leftist gays support Iran, where you can be punished just for being suspected of homosexuality? Well, that's pederasty, right? And over there they throw people off the roofs of small skyscrapers. Or how can a woman who respects her rights support a regime that beheads women just for appearing in public with their heads partially uncovered? How horrible. Her head is partially uncovered, so they have to cut off her head. Somehow that just doesn't fit into any of my parameters. It doesn't make sense to me. And liberals, by the way, liberals there in Iran, are stoned for promoting the idea of liberalism. Maybe liberals, like children, need discipline, by the way, and then they calm down. Maybe the whole problem is that here in our republic, with all this democracy and so on, there's too much freedom for them and they don't know what to do with it?
You know, the Persian people and the Jewish people are connected by an ancient friendship. It goes back to the times of Cyrus the Great. This can happen again, but once again, the decision to act, to rise up right now, is the decision of the Iranian people. We decided to act because we were forced to. We saw enough enriched uranium for 9 bombs. All they had left to do was arm them. We stopped it by attacking. We're striking their nuclear facilities. The main nuclear scientists who were working, they're like Hitler's nuclear scientists. Would you leave them? Of course not. We struck their top command. I can tell you, Brad, that we have just eliminated the chief intelligence officer and his deputy in Tehran as well. Because right now we are already in the skies over Tehran. Our pilots, our brave pilots, are in the skies over Tehran. And we are striking military targets, nuclear facilities. That's exactly what we're doing to eliminate these two threats. Unlike the Iranians, as your reporter correctly said, they are targeting our civilians. They are bombing our civilians. Sometimes I'm asked...
People sometimes ask me, what's the difference? Some shoot at military targets but hit civilians too, while others aim at civilians directly. In the end, children, the elderly, and the sick die all the same. What's the difference? My answer is both simple and complicated at the same time. If you don't understand the difference, you're either very stupid or a scumbag, meaning a liar. So why should I suddenly waste my precious time on you for no reason at all?
That's the difference. They are a terrorist regime. We cannot allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. And by the way, our intelligence shows that they intend to give this nuclear weapon to their Houthi proxies and others. This is global nuclear terrorism, threatening everyone. And finally, they have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, their range is 8,000 kilometers. Very soon, with just a slight increase in distance, they will be able to reach the east coast of the United States. These people who chant death to America have tried twice to kill President Trump, killed 241 of your Marines in Beirut, killed and wounded thousands of American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, tried to bomb a restaurant in Washington, District of Columbia, chant death to America, and burn the American flag. Do you want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not.
I want to talk about the nuclear threat and about President Trump. You just said that Iran tried to kill President Trump twice. Do you have intelligence that the assassination attempts on President Trump came directly from Iran?
Through intermediaries, yes. Through their intelligence, yes, they want to kill him. Listen, he is enemy number one. He is a decisive leader. He never followed the path that others took, trying to negotiate with them in a way that looks weak, essentially giving them the opportunity to enrich uranium, which means a path to making a bomb, topped off with billions and billions of dollars. He took that fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He then made it clear, including now, that you cannot have nuclear weapons, which means you cannot enrich uranium. His decisiveness made him their primary enemy.
Every 3 or 4 years, another gang funded by either Qatar, Iran, or other countries or organizations would attack Israel. After some time and lost lives, this threat would be eliminated. But like mushrooms, others would spring up. But today, when Qatar and Saudi Arabia have entered into deep business relations with the United States, Turkey is involved in Syria, and Iraq has no strength of its own. Only Iran, Russia, and China remain who can finance terrorism. China has economic problems, Russia is bogged down in war, and Iran made a foolish mistake. Thank God they did, but it was a foolish one. They started producing hundreds of ballistic missiles, worked on an intercontinental missile, and were enriching uranium deep underground. Well, honestly, thank God they're idiots. Now I'm going to draw some parallels, and also some perpendiculars, which some people in Europe won't like, both in the West and in the East. Iran has become a threat to Israel. Iran is an independent state, and according to my Ukrainian acquaintances and colleagues, it has every right to build an atomic bomb, develop missiles, and say that it intends to destroy Israel. They say the same thing about Ukraine, that it has the right to create any weapons, place foreign missiles on its territory, join NATO, and shout that they hate the Russian language and Russian culture, even though, well, a third, or maybe even more of the people there not only speak, but also think in Russian. When Iran became a threat from Israel's point of view, Israel started bombing what it didn't like in Iran. And when Ukraine became a threat from Russia's point of view, Russia started bombing Ukraine. You could say that Israel had more reasons, or that Ukraine wasn't planning to go to war with Russia. And then, when a president appeared who wanted friendly relations with Russia, Yanukovych, he was kicked out, that is, expelled from Ukraine, and he was forced to flee. So the situation is very similar. I can't stand Putin's regime, as I've said many times before, although I'm sure this is going to start up again right now. But he works for money. No, I don't work for Putin's money. He doesn't pay me. You see, he has too little money left now to pay. Here they are, the Putin supporters, the Russians, I don't know, call them whatever you want.
Yes.
Well, Russians, that's just a nationality. Yeah, let's say, so to speak, those who approve, who entered, who shout hooray, and so on. Connected to this war, they are bloody murderers. and the Israelis are trying to destroy the nuclear potential that is the threat to their existence. That's the difference. But neither Iran nor Ukraine should have provoked their neighbor to the point where he wanted to strike back even harder. I really hope that Iran will get rid of the Ayatollahs and become a normal secular state and not turn into a fourth world country like Iraq did. I really hope that the war in Ukraine will end and the killing will stop. Both sides, because both sides are people, both sides are human beings. Some invaded, others are defending themselves, but we need to stop the killing of everyone. What it depends on, I don't know. I really wish for peaceful skies over all countries, over Ukraine, over Russia, over Israel, over Iran. And I would really like what the President of the United States of America is proposing, namely to find ways to resolve conflicts without invading each other, causing so many deaths, destruction, and nightmares. I really hope that we will live to see the time when the ideas he expresses will become widely accepted, accessible to everyone, and will start being practiced all over the world. Goodbye until we meet again.